Hello folks and welcome to Tippcast with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined this week by Sean Flynn, and we're going to hopefully have Brian Flannery on the show very shortly. Sean, just Tipperary drawing with Limerick on Sunday. A couple of days have passed now, a bit of water has passed under the bridge. How do you reflect on it?
I thought it was probably one of the best Tipp performances in the last few years, like probably since the All-Ireland final, maybe 19, or even probably even the few group games in 2019. I thought it was excellent. Just thought, like, we actually went to the match with Doonamaher, and we were on the way over there, and we're stopped in traffic in Bursley, going through Bursley, and we're just talking about the modern game, like, and so he was after hurling a game the night before, and he was like 2 man full forward lines and all this, how it's after changing and sharp puck outs and all that sort of stuff. And like the game was like that on Sunday as well, but it was as exciting as any game from the 90s or the 2000s. I found, I don't know what you thought, but I just thought it was fascinating. Like, and there was no standoffish or anything like that. As in, there was no, it was pure war. Like,
yeah, well, like Tipperary just seemed to be that bit more organised. There's probably more athletes on the field. I thought it was very interesting after the match when Dan McCormick was brought up for the interview in RT. He said, talking about the big block of fitness work they did between November and February, and he was saying it was badly needed. So when Tipperary had been blown away in the last couple of years by Limerick, is it possible that was one of the big shortcomings?
Yeah, and sure, even looking at Dan beside Anthony Daly, I was watching the game back after, and Jakers, he's in some nick, like, he's in serious nick. So, but yeah, no, definitely they look fit, and that was the thing as well. Like, they physically as well, like they matched up to Limerick at different stages in the game, and I just thought, like, even Limerick got those couple of points at the start of the second half, but they're able to stay with them. And even Noel's point in the 43rd minute, one thing I'll say is, like, remember the ball that went underneath the Limerick won a puck out and Cahill O'Neill had a shot. Remember Rhys Shelley, it went underneath the post, but he just tapped it down in front of him and he came out and rose it. Tipp played the ball out, got it into full forward line, and then they played the ball across Noel McGrath on his own. But what I found interesting was Noel McGrath was on his own, and I looked back behind him. Darragh Donovan had his two hands out at a couple of the Limerick boys, and like there was a 3 Limerick midfielder and there was 2 forwards, and they had their hands on their hips. So like that'll tell you, like Tipp were putting it up to Limerick, and Tipp were gassing out Limerick as much as Limerick have gassed out Tipp in the past. Like,
yeah, Brian, what are your thoughts on it? A few days have passed now, and Tipperary's draw with Limerick.
Yeah, look, I suppose the key thing was not to lose the game. After having invested so much in it, to at least have ended up on parity. It would have been a disaster having played so well for Tipperary to come away with nothing from the game. So I think that was hugely important. And it does set them, it sets them up nicely for the rest of the year. But the improvement, I suppose, in 12 months has been remarkable. And I'd have to say, in fairness to the management, everything they did seem to work for them. I was probably surprised with some of the changes going into the Limerick game. They seem to be, for a team that was hurling fairly well, to make another 3 or 4 changes, bringing back Bonner Maher, changing your goalkeeper. There was an element of risk obviously involved in that, and I think everything seemed to work well for them. So they must be delighted. I think I see the biggest issue up there in Tipperary is wondering where the Munster final is. Seem to have it just debating whether it is Páirc Uí Chaoimh or Gaelic grounds. I see.
Is that winding up Waterford people?
Jesus, I'd hope to be winding them up. They could do with some bit of winding up from somewhere.
Yeah, we'll definitely come to that match in a little while. The first of those changes that you talk about, Brian, Rhys Shelley, I thought he was absolutely outstanding, Sean. I know you're a big man for the puckouts when you do your analysis in the Guardian, but what did you make of his performance?
Look, I mean, you're extremely confident, and very brave. I mean, composed, like everything you want in a goalkeeper. To have the confidence to come into your first Munster Championship game in Semple Stadium in front of a big crowd. That shows, tremendous, I suppose, character in the player himself. I think he missed it. I think he missed the Fitzgibbon Cup final. He was due to play with UL, but I think was it Barry Hennis or Barry
Dean Mason, was it?
No, just I think, or maybe you're right. Maybe it was Dean Mason. I was wondering, was it the Limerick guy? You could be right, yeah. I think he was injured for that. So maybe the fact that he had an injury early in the year that kind of held him back a little bit. But it was I suppose, look, a brave decision, because I don't think anybody would have said goalkeeper was a major issue for Tipperary after the first few games. So it's a big decision, and I suppose, look, it's worked out, in fairness.
Yeah, Sean, your thoughts on Rhys Shelley?
Yeah, I thought he managed the game well after the first maybe 15 minutes. I thought he managed the game well, and like against Limerick now, you do need to go. Yeah, like the very minute the ball goes dead, you do need to have the ball in your hand and going out quick and not letting Limerick set their midfielder or half back. So, like I thought we did that well, and I'd say we can even improve. Like there was times there we got that quick puck out to our full back line or to Ronan, and we just need to get it a bit 10 yards over the half back line a bit further, where you're taking out all that traffic. But I thought he did very well, like, and probably have two keepers now you can really rely on with the ball in hand. Like, look, shot stopping, some of the shots that come in now, even against Cork, like, unless it hits off you or something like that, but it's all about managing the game when the ball goes into the paw, like, when it goes dead, like. So I thought he did excellent on that, and even the confidence there that time for that score in the 43rd minute, I thought, like, knowing that, having the awareness that his back was holding out the man and he could just tap it out in front of him and then run onto it. Like, it's things like that, doing that in your first championship game, that's top class, like.
Yeah, I thought he was very good. I thought Owen Connolly acquitted himself well. Mark Keogh, we knew was going to come in after Jason Ford went off injured, and he got another 3 points. Funny with Keogh, like, he could go in the middle of one match, he could do something, several things unbelievable and make several simple mistakes as well. But I'd say the more he settles into the team, the better he get. But the one I wanted to come to, Brian, is Bonner Maher, because he's gone through so many injuries and he's that bit older, and that you would have thought surely he's coming towards the end at this stage. But, like, 33 years of age, 34 later this year, and to go out and perform like that and, frustrate Barry Nash. Barry Nash did very little in the game compared to what he usually does. Geez, what a performance by Bonner.
Yeah, look, and again, as I said, it's probably a bit of a surprise that he started. Now, I actually thought in the league game against Waterford, he was excellent as well, and had shown good form. I think maybe what was it, semi-final, maybe it might not went too well for him. But he just has. I mean, I'd hate to be marking him. He does whatever I suppose, good forward. When he gets the ball, he's immediately running at the defender. As I said, he would be a nightmare to try deal with, and he certainly puts a defender on the back foot. If he gets possession at all, and he has that abrasive nature, and I suppose, look, he's physically strong as well, and probably certainly for the Limerick game, adding that extra, I suppose, physicality maybe into the forward line around the likes of Mark Keogh and Jake Morris. Again, you'd have to applaud the management. Good decision, and it worked perfectly. And he gave 55, 60 minutes, and they were able then to bring on fresh legs. And Conor Bowe, again, you'd have to say, for a player that had a difficult outing against Cork, to have the confidence that they're obviously, have great faith in him, and to bring him into the game like that at such a crucial stage. And again, for the player to reward the management and come up trumps, as I said, there's very little that's not working at the moment for Tipperary.
I actually feel sad that we don't have Shane Brophy here today to talk about Bonner Maher, because he's the president of the fan club. Sean, he was excellent, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was unreal. Like, he's even, like, the time Nicky Quaid fouled the ball, like, that just came from Bonner just clearing out an old ruck there and putting pressure on the Limerick lads in possession. And even when he went off that time with the blood injury, it was the one time that Barry Nash had a little nip and went up the field because Bonner wasn't there. But actually, like, he's unreal, like, and even just as Brian said, his physicality. But I even liked, like, there was one like, Limerick still got a point out of it, but there was one stage Barry Nash was hitting the ball on his own, and Jake Morris was tearing up behind him, and he was actually pointing. He's pointing at Bonner. Bonner was going to come and try and close down Barry Nash, but Jake was pointing, no, go with Kyle Hayes, and I'll make up the ground on Barry Nash. And that just shows you that, like, it might be only a small thing, and people might say that's a bit of bull, but, like, that just shows you lads are working for each other, showing up for each other. They know what they need to do. Like, it's like the forwards are as aware of trying to help the backs as the backs are as aware of trying to get the nice ball or a good ball into the forwards, which is, I think, is hugely important. Like,
Were there any stats, Sean, that kind of stuck out from the game when you were doing analysis?
Well, sure, we scored 20 points from turnovers out of 25, like, so that just tells you, where we were at, like. But I look, at the end of the day, like look at our engine room now, like it's Jake, Mark, it's Connor Stakelum, it's all these young lads, like if you look at the team now, like imagine standing maybe a year ago or even 2 years ago and kind of saying that, like, some of the main men on your team is Shelley, Connolly, O'Mara, Stakelum, Tynan, O'Connor, Keogh, Morris, Bowe, Johnny Ryan, like it's a total, like, we have legs, and it kind of feels like, 4 or 5 years ago, it was that young Limerick team kind of playing that Tipp team that was kind of a generational team. Now you kind of have a young Tipperary team with a few experienced players, really kind of trying to take on that Limerick team that have 4 All-Irelands and that. So yeah, like, that was the only one. Like, look, we still struggle on our long puck out, but we used it sparingly, like. And I think we actually kind of nearly planned for that we weren't going to go unreal on our long puck out. So we just put it down to a crowd, and it's just lads about rocking it out and being physical and just trying to win a dirty ball and stop Limerick. Just kind of, yourself, lads, we've seen a lot of teams, they puck the ball down on top of the half back line, and they're nearly like skiers coming down a slope. They're going out through teams. That didn't happen. Like, we were just working like dogs on the break and just hitting them with everything, like, which is, like, I think we're flying it, lads. I think, like, even, I don't know how this game on Sunday will go, but I just think if we're able to match up to Limerick like we did, we're going to be able to do it against, like, Galway and Kilkenny if we do play against them. Like,
Ryan, I'm going to ask you about Limerick here, and just across the board, I thought they looked off colour. Like, the couple of times that Barry Nash did manage to get forward, once he was blocked down, another time he was hooked.
Yeah.
Nicky Quaid, spilling that ball that we talked about. Diarmaid Burns made countless errors of just spilling the ball, just didn't look at 100%, even though he did some good stuff. Hannon with a few spills, Kyle Hayes dropping shots short, slipping over at times. And Keane Lynch and Grode Hegarty not being themselves at all. Like, to me, across the board, they looked really off colour. Do you think this is a temporary thing, or is this a continuation of what we've seen throughout the championship?
Yeah, look, I suppose the one feature of this Limerick team is that it's pretty much the same team that's there, 5-6 years ago. They've made very little, Cahill O'Neill maybe aside, which is quite unusual. And when you look at, say, Kilkenny team that was dominating, they nearly always had 1 or 2 new guys in every year. Now maybe you put it down to the strength of the guys that are already there, or is it the guys that are coming beneath them, Colm Coughlin, Adam English, whether, Ron O'Brien, whether they're not getting the opportunity. But, I think at this stage they would benefit from, an impetus of fresh talent or new players, just to give them that energy doesn't seem to be there as it was. And the other factor, I suppose, is, look, teams have come up in preparations, in their physicality, in how they, I suppose, deal with Limerick, but they're definitely not firing. And I think when that happens again and again and again, I think you do need to make changes. And it'll be interesting to see, everything is on the line, I suppose, in the game against Cork. Will Kiley, just, I suppose, roll the dice once more with the same team, or does he try introduce, a bit like Tipp has, a little bit of, fresh legs into the starting lineup? I think that'll be a big decision. But I think you're right. They're definitely not firing. I suppose it's a credit to them that, they've been hanging into games. Like, and no matter what you said, they still got a draw out of it, and Tipp had to come back to draw it. They could have got a draw against Clare when they were well off it, and even they didn't well against Waterford, they still got the win. So, maybe that's the mark of champions. But, I think when you fly that close to the sun, you'll eventually, you could eventually get burned. And, I think it's a huge game, that goes without saying, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to roll over Cork, albeit that it's in the Gaelic grounds. Again, Cork have that type of pace that if they get a run on you, could cause huge problems for Limerick.
Yeah, like, based on the stats I did, Limerick still had 33% more chances to Tipperary, 48-36. And the old third quarter steamrolling that they've been doing, Sean, like, there was that period between the 40th and the 55th minute where they had 11 chances. And the thing was, Tipperary ended up winning that particular period by 4 points to 1. because Limerick couldn't score. They had 11 chances and only 1 point out of it. There was shots dropped short, shots blocked down. Like, what's all of this saying to you in terms of like Limerick and where they're at?
I don't know what you think, but like, even go back to Clare 2020, like Clare just sat their half back line against Limerick. And just remember, Grode Hegarty was on an amount of ball, like on his own. He like a lot of, like, if you look over the last couple of years, like Kyle Hayes, Tom, Garage, any of those forwards in the half forward line, they were getting ball unmarked because teams were sitting back. Whereas now, maybe teams are saying, we'll drop one lad back and everyone else push up on their man and apply the pressure. So, like, even though they're creating those shots, like, there was very few shots they had the other day where there wasn't pressure, or to get even that shot away, they were after getting hit. They were coming out of being held. Do you know, that sort of way? So they were under massive pressure, like. And, like, Tipp went to town on him in that, like, they went at him in that middle third again. And I just think before, teams were sitting off him. They were worried that maybe Gillan and Flanagan were going to do him for loads of goals. But I think teams are kind of realising now that if you can go in the air physically with Gillan and he can't jump over you and catch balls, you will take him out of the game in that sort of way. And if you have someone in to match Flanagan's legs and stay with him, that he's not going to do as much damage goal-wise. He could still knock over 3, 4, 5 points, but they're not going to do you goal-wise. So I think teams are kind of realising that now. Like, I thought Ronan played that role brilliantly the other day. But as Brian said, though, like, they've only lost one game. They're still in the championship. It's in their own hands too. Like, the one thing I'd say, though, I think, like, Kyle Hayes is wing back now. He's only had one shot in the last 2 games. If you go back to All-Ireland semi-final and final last year, he was one of their main forwards. Like, he scored 3 or 4 points in the All-Ireland final. He scored a couple of points maybe against Galway. You know, you can hit him with puck-outs all day. And for Cork, like, Joyce likes to sit back. Like I don't think Cork would like Kyle Hayes up at centre forward running, because he's trying to run through a crowd of bodies now, and it's easy kind of defend him. Whereas if he gets a ball at centre forward on your 65, geez, it's going to take some effort to try and stop his gallop. Like, whereas it's very easy to stop his gallop coming from the 45, because you can get lads across and just pile into him. Like,
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Kylie makes big changes when he doesn't really have any chance to sort of road test it. But I suppose he knows historically that he can play there, obviously. Just to look at the table here coming into the weekend. So Clare are already through because they bet Cork the other day by a point. Tipp second, knowing that a victory over Waterford will be enough. And then Cork, of course, against Limerick this weekend. Let's talk about Waterford this weekend, who are on no points after 3 games. They're out of it. Huge amount of criticism, both externally and internally. Brian, what's the mood been like the last couple of weeks after that third game?
Mood not good, not good at all. I suppose there's been a lot of anger and frustration vented privately and publicly, I suppose, in the last couple of weeks. You know, and it's difficult. Like, you know, 12 months ago they had won a National League title, bet Tipperary in the first round, had a good game against Limerick, and then just seemed to go flat after it. But I think it's the level of performance against Cork, Blow and Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and particularly the last day out. I think that's, you know, it's not at inter-county level, and there is serious questions. I think the thing that's adding, I suppose, to the misery down at Waterford, of course, is that at minor and under 20 level, haven't won a game this year either. Haven't won a game at any grade or any code. So it's been a woeful season for Waterford in everything, really. So there's, you know, obviously there's serious questions being asked. In, I suppose, unfortunately, there's a lot of finger pointing, I suppose, that goes on as well in that scenario. And look, we're only looking over the fence at Wexford and their issues. I suppose the saving grace is that the team that's bottom in Munster don't face, I suppose, any relegation or consequences. But it has been a difficult couple of weeks. You know, I suppose the general perception is that this is a dead rubber, but I think for management and players, it's absolutely not the case. There's a huge amount at stake. And I think if Waterford don't produce, you know, a performance this Sunday, you know, for both management and players, I think a lot of them won't return.
Yeah, Sean, do you expect there to be a kick from Waterford, or, like, look, they lost very handsomely against Clare, 222 to 16 points. Fair enough, there was the the red card, and Caleb Lyons kind of added to his own issues by getting that first yellow card, getting involved, even though it was harmless enough. Do you expect Waterford to have a kick this weekend, or do you expect them to fold up the tents?
I don't know. Like my father's from
folded
Waterford.
them up last year against Clare in Cusack Park.
Yeah. My father's from Waterford, so I've gone to as many Waterford games as a child. I used to go see Brian there, and you'd meet his brother Liam, and you'd meet Mark, his nephew, there at the games. But like, I just feel that Davy has made him like there's no manliness about the way they're playing. Like, it's all kind of pushing out and trying to get free, and it just feels like when you're the way they're trying to play it, it's just no. I don't know what Brian thinks, but there's just no manliness about it in terms of like it's all kind of systemy and that sort of stuff. You just want your players to plow into the game and go hard. Like, and even this thing of clearing out their full back line for puck outs. And geez, like if I was tipped the weekend, I'd tell Mark, don't bother follow one of the full back line and stand in on the 21 and call their bluff. And if they want to go out the field, let them off, but you stay inside. But like, it's just some of the things, even when they got the man sent off the last day, like the next puck out, it was a 2v1, clear two lads inside the Waterford 45, and Waterford only one back. So I don't know what's going on for all like this, what their systems and what they're practicing. Like, I just think they need to, and I don't know, Brian might know better than me, but like, yourself, involved with teams. I was managing a team, and before we were going bad, and some of the senior players just said, hold on there, you wait outside the restaurant for 10 minutes. We're gonna look after this ourselves now. And I just think there needs to be an element of that the players just need to go, look, we need to go back to what we do and we do best. And like, we haven't been too far away in the last couple of years. And one bad result maybe against Cork last year, and it probably knocked the stuffing out of them a bit. But I just think there just has to be something in Waterford the weekend. But I don't know where they're going to get it from doing what they've done in the first three games. I think players need to lock the dressing room themselves and go, lads, we're going out and doing something that we want to do, or even just, I just think it's very, very, I just think there's more in them, but I just feel they're like, it's just like they have a noose around their neck. Like, they're not able to express themselves like they usually were able to in the last couple of years. I don't know what Brian thinks.
Yeah, Brian, will you take up that point in terms of like, is there a lack of manliness in how they're playing and the tactics?
Yeah, God, I don't know. I'm going to sound like Brian Cody or that. I mean, the game is still the game. It's look, I'm sitting on a height looking down at all these matches, and I can't work it out. And even at times now, the Waterford stats guys and stuff would be sitting behind us, and you'd be just wondering what they're looking down and seeing, and they're maybe worrying about the wrong things. At the end of the day, you got to get your best players on the ball as often as possible. You got to create chances. You got to create scores. I don't think any tactical genius or guru sitting in the stand or on the sideline, can really orchestrate it that they're going to win the game as opposed to the players. I think somewhere along the line, though, and in fairness, there's very little coming out of the camp, or there's very little disquiet from that point of view. You get the vibes that, yeah, look, they're happy with the setup and they're happy with all that side of it. I'm not sure how happy they can be with the tactical approach that's being employed. It's very difficult to see, where you're going with that. But I think you have to strip it back at some, when things aren't going well, you do have to strip it back. Somewhere along the line, even personal pride has got to kick in. As I said, no player goes out to play poorly or as some of the performances really just haven't been up to it. But they've got to find something this weekend. I don't think I don't think they can survive another performance where they don't fire a shot, they don't attack the opposition. And look, we Waterford teams in general, maybe it's a bit of a cliche, but they're probably our best when they're playing off the cuff, when they're attacking teams, they're going for it. And as I said, invariably it gives you a chance in the game. I just don't think they've given themselves a chance in the game so far. In hindsight, when you look back at the opening game, it was before it, you're saying, yeah, look, you'd be fearful, but at the end of the day, Limerick were down to 14 men for 20 minutes. They missed the penalty. That was an opportunity that Waterford should have won the game. Got to take those opportunities. But I just think there's a huge amount at stake. And as I said, look, I think everybody down in the southeast is desperate for, something to hang your hat on to take into next year, that you can say, well, look, there is a bit of a light there. We can see what they're trying to do, what's, maybe where the future is. And there is just, I mean, look, there's no point in saying otherwise. There's a huge air of negativity because of where, I suppose, Waterford are at from an underage point of view. And, as mad as it sounds, the senior team is probably the team I'm least concerned about. When you look through it, your Conor Prunty's, Austin Gleeson, Jamie Byrne, these are all All-Stars. Callum Lyons, All-Star nominee. Desi Hutchinson, multiple All-Star nominee. Jack Prendergast, they're good hurlers. There's something there that they've got to find their best form. They've had a couple of weeks. They took a few days off after the last game. You'd like to think they're coming into the game fresh. You'd like to think that they've, I suppose, shaken the fog from the cown as such, and that they're, that they are going to go up to Semple Stadium and really produce something. Because otherwise it's it can't be a case that bags are packed and they're planning on holidays and hurling in America for the summer. That I think they're in fairness to Jersey, their county deserves more than that.
Sean, I'm hearing the school bell going there. Are you okay for time?
No, I'm grand. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
but I just go back to our Brian's. You'd say something if Waterford didn't have forwards and you had to try and concoct something. But you could have a full forward line of Daisy Hutchison, Kylie, Stephen Bennett. If you want to play Stephen Bennett on the D or whatever you want to, fair enough. You've Ozzie Gleeson, you've loads, you've Fitzgerald, you've loads of forwards. So I can't understand why they just don't play with 2-3 lads inside, get the ball in, and have win the ball, drop the shoulder. That's what Daisy Hutchinson's about. Win the ball, drop the shoulder, and go for it. Stephen Bennett the same. Mikey Kylie, he's a serious hurler. You watch him when you will. He's a serious hurler. I just think they're nearly, I don't know. It's just you see Daisy, he's just in places where you just don't need him to be And
if you look at the last few years, Desi Hutchinson has had an awful lot of the best backs in the country all at sea. He scored a fair bit off Sean Finn, which is no mean feat, obviously. Rory Hayes, he was never put near him. He was out, in his own half the last day against Clare. I just couldn't understand it. He's given Cahill Barrett tough times at different stages with Tipp, albeit that was a different Tipp, that probably the setup wasn't as good and he was left more exposed. But even the Desi Hutchinson point, you see him playing close to goal this weekend, Brian, because he's an unbelievable player.
Yeah, I just think there's an awful pity Ballygunner wouldn't play him in midfield or half back line. It might give the rest of us a chance. I don't think you can concoct any sort of logical explanation why, Desi Hutchinson is trying to, to win possession. I think at one stage in the second half against Clare, he got a ball in the middle of the field. He looked up, there was nobody to hit it to, so he actually had to shoot at the post. But you really don't want him in the middle of the field. Yeah, and I think they could take a leaf from the Ballygunner template with Desi Hutchinson and Patrick Fitzgerald playing two of them close to goals, a la Gillan and Flanagan for Limerick, and work that around. But I think they definitely, I would definitely have said that they've not enough shooters in the team and too many workers, if you know what I mean. At the end of the day, if you look at the scores, what did they get the last day? 16 points, 18 points, 19 points. You're not winning any Munster Championship game with those totals. Patrick Curran came on and got, 2 shots at the post, 2 points. I know the game was over, but he is a scorer. You need to get more scorers into the team. You need to get them on the ball. And you just need to, you're just going to have to hurl. As I said, the smart puck outs or the cuteness or the overloading and all this sort of stuff hasn't worked. Do you know what I mean? So there's no point in flagging it to death. Maybe a little bit more simpler on the game plan. Might work a little bit better as well.
Yeah, well, players in the right positions, Sean. I mean, Darrell Lyons was cornerback for most of the game. Surely they could have seen that, right, if we put Lyons on Tony Kelly will move full forward like he did on Cahill Lyons a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and even if you look at stats are this and that, Waterford have scored 30 points from turnovers in the Munster Championship. Like Tipp have scored 350. That just tells you, like, I just think Waterford, they're, as Brian said, they're structured. It's all over the place. Like, and then you're said positionally, then players are all over the place and they're in positions that they don't want to be. Like, I just think they just need to go back to, even if it's 15 and 15, and so be it if they get done for a couple of goals the weekend. But they need to go back to something where everybody is fighting and they're in positions that suits them. Like Darrell Lyons was a serious midfielder there for a couple of years there in the COVID years, like, you know, and against Kilkenny he was excellent. Like, so I just think there's been players as you said, their players are being asked to do jobs that they just don't need to be doing. Like just play your players in the best positions, and not even positions, but in the best areas of the field where you're going to get the most out of them, and at least have two lads inside that no matter what happens during the game, that there's at least one or two lads to hit inside. But like, I don't know, like, is the way Davy's setting up, is that defensive? But then when you say it's defensive, they're not turning over teams and getting scores off it and attacking them. And that's what Waterford have done in the past. Like, they've destroyed Tipp in a couple of years because they've won the ball back they've turned the Tipp forwards over, and then they've come out of wave down the field and got scores. Like, and to be honest, it's a weird thing to say, but I'd love to see Waterford get back to that this weekend and have a right rattle at Tipp, because I think it'll stand Tipp in good state. And, you know, you need Waterford, you need all the 5 teams going well in Munster. Like, you want them, like, you know.
Like, work rate and organisation, like having a solid platform should be the prerequisite, and then you add a certain amount of tactics on top of it. They seem to have put the cart before the horse. But there are opportunities for Waterford, Brian, because, like, you look at those 3 players who came off with cramp. Conor Stakelum, Gerard O'Connor was definitely limping off, and there was one other player who came off with cramp. I just can't remember off the top of my head. But even Alan Tynan was probably an awful lot more quieter. He was probably doing a job, but I don't think he got the ball in his hand more than once or twice. Like, Tipperary could be that bit more fatigued going into this game after the huge kind of level they had to get to this weekend, both in the head and the body. And obviously Waterford have been sitting back, and, you know, they should be fresh enough.
Yeah, look, that would certainly be the hope from Waterford point of view. They're coming in. They've had 2 weeks. As I said, there was a huge amount of negativity, as you can imagine, down here. Media, local radio, everything, I suppose, was quite negative. So they've had a chance maybe to clear that from the minds. They should be fresh. They should, as I said, it would be a fear, I suppose, the Tipperary point of view is that there's so much invested emotionally, physically, that to get back up to that pitch straight away, and that's where Waterford, that's where you need to get the good start, where you need to have lads that are running at the Tipp defence and trying to engineer early goals, and and then give yourself a chance and get a foothold in the game. That surely would have to be the plan or the hope from a Waterford point of view. And then as I said, Munster is crazy. You know what I mean? Anything can happen. If you got that good start, and all of a sudden, people are tuning into wondering what's going on in Limerick, and I suppose, look, anything is possible in Munster Championship game, but it's just Waterford have been so far off it in the last 2 games that it would be a big leap of faith to expect a winning performance. But to say about, look, if you can't win, and you fail better, I think that's the minimum requirement. They've got to show something in this game. Because right now, whether it is, supporters, clubs, I think everybody is really looking for some chink of light or something that they can hang their hat on and say, well, look, yeah, maybe next year, maybe another 12 months of being together and under the new management, maybe that will work, because otherwise, as I said, there may be no next year for a lot of the, I suppose, the panel, etc. And and I suppose, look, this is the big thing. This isn't a development project for Davy Fitz and his management. This is a mature panel of players that have won minor and under 20, won All Irelands. They're the age profile, and I suppose for somebody that's, for me, looking at it from top down, bottom up. The big fear, of course, is that you have a huge amount of players that are on the panel, the official panel, the extended panel, that are in that 27, 28, 29, 30 years of age bracket. Their window is relatively small, and you could have a huge exodus of players all at the one time. And you're looking at, we haven't won since the won under 20, under 21 All Ireland, haven't won a game at under 20, and minor record has been shocking. So there's huge concern, I suppose, in general. But your senior team is your blue ribbon team. It does have a huge impact on the rest of the county and the mood of the county. And I suppose one of the great successes of the last 20, 25 years is Waterford being competitive, is that, generating that interest in hurling, because, look, Waterford has many challenges to start with, not huge population base, small number of clubs in comparison to other counties, huge competition, I suppose, from other sports, particularly soccer. So, Waterford need to get things right. Do you know what I mean? They can't afford to be off in development or underage, because if they are, you can fall out of competitiveness very quickly and really be facing into the abyss.
And Brian, sorry, like, is McNulty and O'Mahony huge loss from that dressing room? Not even on the field, but just from the dressing room in terms of leadership and.
Yeah, look, I mean, everybody, Tig de Burke is a loss. He said he was sitting beside us with one of those moon boots at the last game. I think everybody is a loss when you don't have huge strength in depth. But Tig de Burke definitely is one that, I mean, Michael Cahill has, I suppose, again, is a player that you were looking that might make a big impact. He's been out injured. But look, every county has injuries. If we were to talk about the list of Tipperary injuries, that's part and parcel of it. You got to be able to deal with that. But there's definitely, I suppose, look, the mood is quite somber down here, and I think everybody is just looking for, for some performance that'll, going into next year, that gives you something to build on, because we had a difficult day in Ennis, Waterford, difficult day in Ennis last year. The league didn't go well this year. Okay, the league doesn't matter, grand. And, there would have been lots of talk. Look, Davy will have something up his sleeve now for the championship, and there'll be a different team come championship. And it's really just fallen so flat that there's really more questions than answers.
Are we going to see, like, Jack Fagan as sweeper again? It probably hasn't worked since Tig de Burke got injured. And then the question I'm going to ask you, Brian, is, can we see a bit of, like, Patrick Kern starting? Will one of the young Fitzgeralds start? Are we going to see lads in probably more attacking positions like Desi Hutchinson, and will Austin Gleeson start? Like, there's so many questions there where you're like Cormac Daly. A year ago, this lad was flying. A year ago, Patrick Kern was flying. They didn't become bad hurlers. So can we not see some of this energy back in the team, Brian?
Yeah, and you need that. I suppose one thing Cormac Daly has is that pace. Do you know what I mean? He's whether you play him at half-back, midfield, half-forward, he's kind of lad that can play anywhere. A bit like Alan Tynan this year with Tipperary. He has that pace. I mean, I'm always a huge fan of Patrick Kern. Believe it or not, got man of the match in the All-Ireland minor and under-21 All-Ireland winning games. He's reminds me a little bit the likes of Tommy Dunn back in the day, very much a touch hurler, great striker of the ball. I'm not sure about his GPS stats, whether the meet what maybe Davy's looking at, but I think, would it be good to see him maybe at 11 and on the ball, and as I said, the two Ballygunner lads inside. Yeah, I think that could certainly work. Austin Gleeson, I suppose, look, that's always the question again is, where do you play him? Do you start him? There was all this about not being fit, coming on at half time against Cork when we're already 9 points down. There's just so many things that's questionable, and that makes it very hard. Jack Fagan probably isn't suited to playing, the sweeping role in front of the full back line. I don't think it's again, he's better either wing back or wing forward, maybe contesting ball. That's his forte. We need to see Callum Lyons back attacking. Do you know what I mean? And again, maybe wing back is probably his best position. If it was me, would I throw Austin in at 6? I probably would. You could have your Dara Lyons and maybe helping out in maybe as an extra centre back or that type of thing, that could certainly work. There is plenty, the Jack Prendergast, Neil Montgomery, there's plenty of guys with legs as well that you can work into the team and still have your Patrick Fitzgerald, Desi Hutchinson close to goal. There is the makings of a competitive team there. They just have to, it will be interesting to see what team is starting, but you probably can't have wholesale changes either. As I said, while there's some ways nothing at stake for Waterford, in other ways there's huge amount at stake. They will have to get a performance. So I don't see, that you'd be making 5 or 6 changes on the basis that, look, you're giving lads experience for next year. I don't think it can be like that, because you just can't afford to, you can't afford to get a trimming basically in Simple Stadium. You really got to be really competitive, and ideally you want to be taking the game to Tipperary from the throw-in and then see where it takes. And like, hurling is mad, if you got a good spell, the confidence could flow through the team, and that's really what you want. And that's probably the biggest test of players and management is, confidence, having had such a difficult year, to be able to to rock up the Simple Stadium and, as I said, shake off the cobwebs and say, right, look, this is senior intercounty. I always, even motivated myself, I always thought about when you be playing that you never know when it's going to be your last game, even in good times. There has to be that, and fear can be a great motivating factor. There has to be that fear among players and management that, if this doesn't go well, it could be our last day out, and that should be a driving and a motivating factor for Waterford Sunday as well.
Yeah, and it looks like Liam Cahill is going to be banned for a couple of games now, a 4-week ban, so he won't be on the sideline. Apparently, he won't be allowed to help the team prepare or have any.
Might keep things a little bit calmer on the line.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering, right? So Liam Cahill is obviously going to want to get one over on his former players, but the manner of how things happened, I know there was a bit of jawing during the league match. Sean, are the Waterford players ever going to be more pumped up to stick it up to their former manager as on this occasion here?
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, look, we've all been in teams, and look, very rarely it ends well with a manager. It is so, like, you kind of have to look at the good times over the 3 years, and right, they had a couple of bad results and stuff like that. So I don't think a lot of them would be that way against Liam. I don't know. I just don't think so. I think they got to an All-Ireland final with him. They got to Munster finals. They won a league title. So I think, personally, one or two might go, geez, maybe I didn't deserve that or this, that. But, like, that's with everything. That's with a winning team, winning All Ireland. So I don't know. I think what I think Waterford need, it's as Brian said, it's about themselves. It's all about themselves now, and it's about what they're about.
And Sean, who's going to win this game and why?
Funnily enough, I think it actually, after saying all this about giving out about Waterford's tactics and all this, I actually think if Waterford go back to what they did a couple of years ago, it will suit Tipp, because it'll be more of a normal sort of game. Whereas I think if Waterford go back to what they're doing so far, like even the way they played Tipp in the league, it kind of makes the game a bit all over the place, and it's hard to get your flow, because that sort of way, next thing you're a corner back and you're looking around and your man that you're marking is 40, 50 yards out the field, and you're like, do I go? Do I stay? So I think probably Tipp will get their flow easier if Waterford go back to basics, or whatever you want to say, and go back to what they did in years gone by. It'll probably be a bit of feeling out, because every team has kind of tried to feel him out. I just felt Waterford and Cork, I just felt that Jack Fagan didn't know. There was no handover between when he was dropping back and when Darragh Fitzgibbon was going deep down the field. Say when Waterford had the puck and went long, there was no handovers, and it killed Waterford in the middle third. If they get that right, there'll be a small bit of an improvement in Waterford straight away. But I just feel that I feel Tipp, even if they're down a couple of lads, I still think Tipp might eke it out. But I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. Like, as Brian said, there's people saying where are the Munster finals on. Like, I think even how bad Waterford are going, I still think it's going to be a tight Munster Championship game. And I just hope, I really hope the Waterford go back to the old way, because I think it'll suit Tipp. Whereas I think if it's this Davy thing, I think it'll just take a good while to get used to it and figure out, because the last 3 games Tipp have played, it's just been go for it. Just, you know, that sort of way. Whereas this is a bit different. Like, it is a bit different. You might have 5 or 6 seconds on the ball to look up around, whereas that wasn't happening in the last 3 games. Like,
yeah, Brian, final word to you. How's this going to go, and who's going to win it?
Look, tis hard to see anything other than a Tipperary win. You know, there's no point in saying otherwise. Just that, you know, I suppose, look, Waterford have been on the outside looking in at all these great games in Munster. You know, they need to, I suppose, look, they need to get involved. You know, they need to come to the party sort of thing. You know, and look, Waterford have contributed a huge amount to Munster hurling in recent years. I think it's important. I've often said it. There's too few counties competitive in hurling, and I don't think we want to see, whether it is a Wexford or a Waterford or any county, drop out at that level of competitiveness. But the one thing that would give me a little bit of confidence is that I've seen all these players. You know, I've watched them hurl well. They have performed. These are the same players that, as I said, won a league with Liam Cahill 12 months ago, that reached the Munster final, that reached All-Irelands. Okay, they haven't got over the line on a lot of occasions, but they just got to find that competitiveness, that pride in themselves as much as anything else. And when they pulled that jersey over the cown on Sunday, that they're willing to go to battle and go to war, and, as I said, play like it is their last game, and that, you know, if they can bring that sort of competitiveness out, then we should have a game, and I think that's what everybody wants to see.
Okay, well, look, lads, you've helped tee it up lovely, so we're all looking forward to the match this week. And thanks very much to Sean Flynn and also to Brian Flannery, lads, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Nice.
Take care. Mind yourself.